pattern cutting, and I like the jigsaw technical side, like putting together a jigsaw, the technical side of things. When I was looking at historical clothing, I was really interested in the actual, in the costume, in the connections of the underwear and the layers, and how the pieces fitted together somehow. And I think that's what I carry through in my work. I think I try to think of myself as somebody that keeps learning all the time. And there is a name for that. I think it's polymath, I'm not sure, but somebody that likes to keep learning and pushing through everything that I do and make. I think I need to feel like I'm learning something from it. So it certainly isn't mass production or even, you know, it's almost what I would say very much one-offs and exhibition-y style work, really, is what I do. So I've got a bit of a list here. You could make your own list of 15 designers to 15 designers to dissect, and maybe you're drawn to some and not to others. Maybe one has a particular way of working that you relate to, or is it the storytelling and the communication of the collection that you like? Is it the love of craftsmanship the designer has, the construction methods, or the attention to detail and the use of color and print and texture? Or is it the mix of fabric weights? What underpins the brand's work? What has and continues to inspire the designer's creativity? And how is this represented throughout their work? It's interesting because you do sometimes get students who love somebody's work and they are inspired by it, and they tend to start by copying it in a way or translating it in some way in their own work. But really what they should do is look back to see what that designer was inspired by, because then you'll get the same inspirations, but you'll come up with something much more creative, much more unique in your own. So if we look at Comme des Garçons now, we want to let's dissect the page, basically. If you look at this page, it's not a glossy magazine image, you know, from previous years, like not high glamour. Who do they want to attract? If you look, there's braces on the teeth, it's youth, it's carefree, it's messy hair, it's laughing, there's no makeup, bare shoulders. So what does this all say? It's about the communication, isn't it? The communication of the brand. So what we should look at the influence and the mood of the brand, the reoccurring themes, questioning construction, color usage, fabric usage, fabric manipulation, pattern or print, silhouette, shape, form. For example, is it conceptual or traditional? So styling and communication, I've got, is it organic, structured, layered, fluid, geometric? It's quite a few different words there to take in. So Caracabou, if I've pronounced that right, probably not, Kawakabu, I mean, oh dear, has an intuitive conceptual approach. Well, you can see very conceptual, very conceptual, often beginning a design process with a single word or abstract image, which is then pursued through experimental methods of construction. So, and I remember working with Shelley Fox, and she worked in exactly the same way. Shelley Fox now is head of Parsons' MA course, Fashion and Society. She had a brand in the 90s and early 2000s, and very much worked like that. I was a pattern cutter for her for about 10 years, and she worked with a word, and that's what she would give me, a word. She would just give me a word and say, this is what we're doing this season. And it's working in a very conceptual approach to shape making, really. So we're looking at the influence and the mood, questioning the norm. This is just my own little list that I've put down. I've looked at this image and thought, and the work of this designer, and think, right, well, what does the image give me in when you think about the mood? This is a little sort of game that you could do yourself with a designer. Pick a designer and do the same. You know, think about it. They are definitely questioning the norm, disrupting, disturbing, blurring genders and ideals, and women's roles. There's a lot of sort of influences from birth, death, and weddings, and punk, Victoriana, mixing cultures, and a void and a volume, from what I can see. So reoccurring themes, I've definitely seen sort of this whole redefining femininity, changing the way the body looks, changing the actual body, questioning that, questioning the shape of what is beautiful, what's supposed to be beautiful. What clothes are, what are they? Do they have to be necessarily, I mean, are they there to communicate? Are they there as an art piece? Do they have to be mass produced? Do they have to be practical even? So here we've got exploring hybrid identities by fusing culture, gender, and age. So it's not necessarily for a certain age, it's for a person with a certain type of mindset. Obsessive construction, definitely. Pattern cutting and technique, absolutely, definitely. And also, if we look at the colour, it's very monotone usually. And I've looked at quite a few collections here. I've not just looked at one collection, I've looked over a few collections. There seems to be an absence of colour, monochrome, black, white, nude, red, peppered with little bright accents. You're getting to realise that we all know as soon as you see the image that you know that it is that designer's image. Often using the same fabrics on each collection and each piece of work, really. There's always tulle in it, there's always felted wool, there's usually sculptural cottons or leather, multi-layering. So it's there's a way of working, an image that the designer is trying to get across. And then fabric manipulation. There is definitely fabric manipulation through wrapping and draping and padding and knotting. So they don't just use fabric and sew it. There's definitely a draping on the stand and a manipulating it and changing it in some way.
Maybe, just so to explain, is that for for most of my illustrations, there's going to be like a front and a back, and then like a picture going on in the background, like I did for my last project. But for like the simple repeats, I was thinking of putting them all on one page just to kind of break up visualization, so it gives like the viewer room to breathe. But my problem is that I've got 4 very simple designs, and one of them I actually designed to be for a dress, and the other's a shirt and trousers. So that's why I've got one with the dress and the other with shirt and trousers. But I actually think just the trouser one in a way is a bit more interesting, or so
what's
I'm
the
thinking
question
that then the simple one for the dress.
What is the question that you're asking here? How to present it, you mean?
Sorry, no, sorry about that. Yeah, the simple one for the dress, I was thinking of then making into the shirt and trouser one. So then if to fit that composition, but yeah, I was just thinking.
You're thinking
do you
out loud,
agree? Like just the shirt and trouser one's more interesting.
Well, I think the thing is, if you're trying to work out what you're trying to communicate, and your work is, it looks like, I mean, here you can see there's a lot of layering, you know, and it's like you could wear 6 or 8 pieces on top of each other and it make one outfit, but then you could bring them all apart to make, you know, 3 or 4 outfits. So oh, sorry, oops, go back. Oh, going off now. So I'm thinking, what if you're trying to say to me, how would you present that work? You've got a trouser suit and a dress. Is that what you're trying to say? Sorry, I'm not sure what the question was. Are you saying that you've got some ideas, and you're not quite sure how to present them? Hello? Hello? Are you still, can everybody hear me? Yes, you can. Okay. I'll tell you what, I'll carry on and we'll come back to that at the end. That's the best thing, isn't it? Okay. Okay. So where were we? Let's carry on. Okay, so pattern. You know, some designers use pattern within their you know, the patterned fabrics, like it could be embroidered or embossed, or what, not embossed, but appliqued or you know, embellished in some way. But I think really with this designer, we're not really looking at that sort of way of working. It's more about maybe a motif. There is a motif here. There is color combination, black and white, and there's a bit of an image, but it's a placed pattern rather than an overall pattern of, say, flowers or geometrics or whatever. So then we've got silhouettes, and we're looking at silhouette, shape and form, and you know, there's very you can see this coming through the Victoriana sort of almost feeling as well. It's rethinking the body shape, mixing cultural references, age and gender again, layered, distortion. So it's all in there. And then when we think about styling at the end of this, we're looking at, you know, I mean, that's actually, looking at that, does cross over a little bit with other designers I've seen. Well, maybe no, it very much is this designer. I mean, I think Lee McQueen might have done something, but his would have been a little bit more dangerous than this, possibly more surreal. And if it was Galliano, it would have been very much more heavily made up. So there is some you'd be able to sort of dissect elements eventually and work out which designers is which if you saw them in the magazines. So we're using wings here and veils and sculptural headpieces and so on. So yeah, so I mean, that's just to get you started to think about the first designer that we're looking at. And then now, completely different here, we're looking at Dries van Noten. Luxury. I mean, if you look at this, what does it make you think? I mean, it certainly is much more, it's a different feel to the previous one, which was all about the girls with the, you know, very much natural, with the braces on the teeth. Remember, it's much more about, I don't know, there was a much more natural feels coming through there. Then here we've got luxury, opulence, decadence, ostentatious, class driven, possibly, you know, completely different feel here. It took completely. So we're looking at Dries van Noten, and for me, I mean, I've just started making some notes again. So I've got layering, luscious pattern and texture, tactile, sensuousness and intimacy, color rich, fun, surprising, clashing, pattern brocades and damasks, rich interior decorations, scales, simple motifs, opulence, decadence, Venetian splendor, Agatha Christie, Orient Express, Silk Trail, fabric markets, Marrakesh, Delhi, Paris, Austria, Europe 1900s, colliding cultures, relaxed clothes, relaxed shapes, very much more traditional garment shapes than what we've seen in the previous designer. Nothing too close to the body, but tailored shapes and fluid drape as well. So when we're looking at this, we're thinking, you can see that is definitely a jacket, and that's a pair of trousers, and there's a shirt. Whereas when you looked at the previous designer, it was much more about a silhouette and a sculpture. So this one's fall 2018 and fall 2020. So there's two years between. but you can see it's the same person somehow. There is a signature, is definitely seen here. And you know, I don't know, there's lots of clashing color again. Like the middle one, we've got a mix of fabrics too here. But there's the wools with the sparkling elements in the middle. That's quite a contrast. Then we've got these brights, the prints and the satins and the shine, and then mixed with contrast with wool and fluffy fabric surfaces. Really interesting. And going straight onto here, there is a I mean, it is a very, I think you can see that it's the same designer. I think you'd have a good guess that it was Dries van Noten because of the print, heavy print, bright colors, clashing colors as well. This is for 2019, that's autumn winter. Traditional print on very, very current oversized jackets, clashing colors, clashing fabrics as well, textures, kaleidoscope. So this is 2016 to 2020. Is it? Yeah, got 16 and 17 and 20, yeah. And you know, they could almost be in the same collection as far as I'm concerned. There's that whole clashing thing going on again. Beautiful love of textiles and print and fabric and tech, basically. We've got more here from 2016, feminine but with decadence, I'd say. So the first one, you know, with the, it isn't what you, it is sort of like dressing up, isn't it? It's not like what you'd, I don't know, there's something there. There's almost like a dressing up box when you're putting on things, you know, with the gloves and the sort of, then you've got the sequins on top of a printed dress. And then, you know, I don't know, there's the layering going on again. You've got a mix of cultures here. It's almost like a 50s jacket on the end there, coat, satin jacket. But then you've got like layers going on underneath. Yeah, these are all 2016. That's right. That's good. So these are all from the same collection. And I was going to say that they should be because they've got the same fabric in two of them. It's interesting. And then we don't forget menswear. So going back to 2014 here, I mean, looking at this, there is a slight, I don't know, is it a rock feel or is there a slight feminizing going on here of the menswear? Lots of colliding cultures again, with that end one looks quite Japanesey or something, I don't know, or is it like the one in the middle is like, you know, we've got the clashing, we've got the same similar colors going on with the jacket and the shirt, but one's transparent. We've got the first one's like velvet and transparency, and we've got the wools and the fur, very much clashing of fabrics and weights. More menswear here, heavier fabrics, layers and pattern again. Yeah, so certainly that first one you could say was Dries van Noten, maybe not so much the second one, possibly. But anyway, yeah, so that's that. I mean, and I would say that you would definitely say that that was a very, very vibrant designer, beautiful colors, beautiful fabrics, and you sort of almost want to eat them up, you know. But would you wear them? That's the other thing is, maybe you wouldn't wear everything all at once. I probably would if I could. I think it'd be amazing to have the opportunity to wear that work like it is, you know, how it's intended to be worn. Now we're going on to the next and final, which is Anne de Meulemeester. I think I have pronounced that one right. And this is this suggests again then something else again. I mean, to me, a darker edge. So more serious, less opulent, rock chick even. So it's interesting that you know, they start the mood off right from the beginning by looking at your, you know, the way they advertise the collection. So I'm going to just read the article here from the creative director. Nothing captures the essence of a designer quite like their take on a classic. However, transfusing a specific aesthetic into the familiar is no easy feat. So a designer quite often has a classic shape that they take through each season. And with her, it's the white shirt. And there is always a white shirt somewhere in the work. An essential item is at its best when it maintains a level of truth, its foundation still recognizable to an audience in the midst of nuance. This speaks to the way in which clothing acts as language, where wearers connect with the designers based on a fluency of what is spoken or created. A mutual relationship is developed from this poetic exchange, and a bond is formed. The story of one designer in particular is rooted in this idea, and for her it is the simple white shirt, says it all. But it is interesting then to think that the bond is formed between the designer and the buyer, and that you would always go back for that same white shirt. Why not? Why would you look anywhere else? If you found exactly the one that fits you, the type of style, the type of fabrics you like. There might be something slightly different each season with it, but it is there is the simple, you're buying into that language and that communication that designer's trying to get across. And to me, this says it all, really. The designer here with Patti Smith, she lives, breathes and believes in her work. She is her work. Strong woman, with something to say, with a tough edge. Yeah, you can imagine these two sitting around, talking about whatever. I don't know, I was going to say gossiping, but probably not actually. But yeah, I mean, there is a definite sort of, a feel there. This is the type of woman they want to wear their clothes. And of course they do menswear too. So if we're looking at the menswear then here, well, this is my inspiration. What I think is the inspirations for the menswear and the brainstorming here. It's less romantic and more noir, so more dark. There's a darker edge. I'm not saying dark edge like Lee McQueen, but there is a sort of, is it punk? Is it goth inspired, dark edge, bondage influences? I say the bondage influences because there's always seems to be leather and straps about in there somewhere. There's the angst-ridden poet feel, skinny rocker, Patti Smith, sensitive soul. So it feels like there's something a bit more like a poet going on, and but there's a sort of a tough-edged disposition. Looking to the past, there's 18th century details, fine art, 18th century paintings, vintage influences, definitely 1930s coming through in some of the things, and a very artisan look. I mean, that is definitely an artisan look. So again here, less romantic, more film noir, gothic inspired again. When you see the picture, I just start writing it down. Definitely an angst-ridden poet. I don't know whether that's something to do with the expression. Very androgynous, not sure if it's a girl or a boy. There is a definite even the way the makeup, there is hardly any makeup, or the hair, the way the hair is styled, it's her way of getting of communicating what she thinks and what she wants you to feel like when you buy these clothes. But also when you look at that, there's definitely vintage 30s, 1930s, there is slightly biased cut, maybe not, but there is a sort of lingerie vintage influences coming through. But then you've got the tough boots and gloves in leather. Quite interesting. And then slightly contrasting with that, but still of the same theme, still of the same sort of nature or aesthetic slightly, flowing, layering, historical influences. So if you say enough of the same words for each thing, then there's definitely a signature carrying on through the work. If there's historical influences in everything so far, and there's layering in just about everything so far. So then here, the influences and the mood. You've got French Revolution here, sort of Napoleon, 1789 to 1799. I've got written down here 18th century battle. Nautical theme creeps in concerning navigation, sailors or maritime cultures, shipping. buttons as well. Look at all the buttons. There seems to be a lot of buttons in her work, actually. There's lots to do with fastenings. There's lots of raw edges here as well. But there's also a lot of consideration of detail. But you can certainly see, even through the width of the collar, the scale of the details makes a difference too. And the boys and girls seem to be wearing the same, or the same type of thing. So we've got here, yeah, historical influences. We've got naval fastenings, Napoleon layering. Same thing again here. This is the same images, but I don't know whether the fabrics are, looks like there is like linen, but layering up as well, which is really interesting. And for me as a pattern cutter, I want to get in there and see. And then you mixed it with the drape of the, you know, what could be a nightie in the middle there, but, you know, and also very masculine woman's face again there. So it's like really blurring the boundaries of what is feminine and what is masculine. So if we talked about reoccurring themes, there's the layering and the mix of fabrics, the raw edges, deconstruction on edges, tailored jackets paired with relaxed trousers. So you get these very heavily tailored things, but then very drapey things all put together. There's definitely straps and strings and ties, multiple contrasting coloured buttons and fastenings, and smooth and rough textures and drape. You know, with this seems to go across the girls and the boys. Some more examples. I think I've gone mad with the examples on this one because I love it so much. But and I think, what date? This is 2020. Yeah. So I think if we go back a minute, that was, oh, I haven't put the date on that one. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, but I think I've gone from something like 2014 or 12 even, right through to, well, 2020. And there doesn't, you can see there is a definite signature coming through. And I think it is the angst poet and that sort of bohemian lifestyle type of person that I'd love to be, actually. I'd love to just be going off, walking down the street wearing that and just being an artist. I mean, look at the inside details of the pocket with the bits of leather where the buttonholes are all beautifully sewn in, and then the girl's thing there with the sort of little slashes through her beautiful silk, you know, trouser silk. They both go together so well as well. So we've got this as well, styling with asymmetric mix of materials again here with the heavy gloves and the lace over the top of the silk, and the silk being displayed in an asymmetric way on the first one, silk blouse. So it's quite romantic as well in a way, but it says here with a hint of, it says on there with a hint of danger. So it's quite interesting. And then menswear. I mean, this is this costume? I don't know. Very monocolor there, monocolor, but the silhouette shape and form is very, very, a strong signature coming through. Flowing shirts, 18th century tailored shapes, Napoleon, artisan still. This one's got narrow legs. There's yeah, a lot of things there, fastenings and so on, straps, and the belt. Notice the belt is always long. It's not just a belt that goes around the waist. There's always a long strap that hangs. And there again, we've got the long straps hanging again on the belts here, and the women's things that are sheer and opaque in a monocolor again, and a narrow shape. It's not all big and oversized, is it? It's quite narrow, actually. It's quite interesting too. And then we've got the men again, all narrow again here too, actually. 18th century, what have I got here? 18th century tailored. Oh yeah, so that's interesting. 18th century tailored shapes. So yeah, I mean, the thing is, if she's inspired by the 18th century tailors, I mean, these were really skilled workers and highly sought after, and the tailoring industry at that time was mainly in London. And by the late 19th century, lower quality mass-produced clothing began to be made in factories. So, you know, she's inspired by the very high quality tailoring, obviously. Fabric textures and color. Here again, I mean, that's a man, but very, very androgynous. And then if you just read through those again, I'm just repeating myself here. We've got the transparent, the crepe, the lace, the fine and the heavy, the velvets and the fur, the vintage and frills and utilitarian we haven't said before, and luxury, utilitarian and luxury, yeah, rough and smooth, pearl white, cream and black, pops of bright colors. I think all of that actually displays and describes. We're nearly at the end of this. Sorry, I've put quite a lot of these ones in, but yeah. So yeah, and again, velvet, silks, and furs. Not quite so opulent, say, as Dries van Noten, but still very. You can see it's obviously very expensive, but it doesn't. It's worn in a way that doesn't makes you think it's not. So it's all about the styling and the accessories and the styling. Here we've got, again, we've got the belt, large buckles. There's, you know, the long gloves again, keep coming back all the time, caps and berets and so on. And all of that is very much her signature. And then let's think, we've got to finish on the white shirt here, which has crept in all along. But it's not just put on in a, that's interesting, the collar coming around on that first one, like attached collar. And she's put it on in such a way that, you know, it's open at the front. It's not meant to be neatly buttoned up. So that's, yeah, very, very, the way she's displaying it, very, obviously very androgynous clothing again here. And again here on the menswear, and there's the white shirt again. So yeah, okay, so this would be a nice thing for you to do, and this is what I was thinking you could probably do after, is to choose a designer and collect at least 10 key catwalk images of a fashion brand. Search out something exciting, some exciting non-fashion images that capture the mood of the brand. Like, and why I'm saying that is because I've seen, every time I've seen it quite a few times when I've looked at Anne de Mielemuster. She's got things like lifestyle images that come up quite often with her work, like these very black spiky cutlery of knives and forks and spoons, and or, you know, and you can imagine the type of what would she live in, what type of household furniture would she had even. So you're sort of building a signature somehow around this designer, and you could do it, you could choose a designer first and then do it for your own work, really. Define the mood of the brand yourself. Don't read up anything about it, just see if you can define the mood of the brand and any reoccurring themes, just like doing exactly what I did, like just bullet pointing, brainstorming, if you like, whatever comes to mind when you see the garments, and then you'll start to collect words that keep coming back and back and back each time on each of the 10 key catwalk images. What does the silhouette look like? Is it, what are the fabrics like? What the pattern like? Then think about your own collection. Do this for yourself. Collect materials that will help you pull together your own collection identity, both expected and unusual. Paper, fabric, leather, yarn, rubber, lace, beads, wood, objects that can help capture the essence of your collection. I mean, you probably, obviously you're doing this yourselves anyway, but it's just nice to just do it again with with a focus to finding out what the signature is. Then you could think of 3 keywords to describe your design identity and write these in the chat, or where you could write these in the chat if you can. That would be great to do that right now. In fact, that would be really good, because then we could chat about them, about what your 3, if you're thinking now about your own work, you could write 3 keywords in the chat for us to discuss. What is your collection about? or what is your, if you could, or if you are doing a collection, what would it be? What would you intend to communicate? What's the mood, and what are the reoccurring themes, and what do the silhouettes look like? So hang on, I don't know if this is my last. Oh, it is. So I'm just going to carry on talking while you're thinking about that. So it is interesting about fashion in itself. So just to finish, back in the 1980s, I'm thinking creativity was mostly understood as based on the individual genius or a practice of certain skills or a craftsmanship. But today, some 40 odd years later, is it 80s, 90s to 10, 20, I was thinking it might be 50 years later, 40 years later, it might be more accurate to understand that creativity is no longer resembles this guise. No longer is it necessarily about the well, it could be still, but it's not all about the craftsmanship. It's not all about this sort of genius designer, which I suppose we've said in the past would have been maybe Alexander McQueen or Galliano. We've always, those words are always being brought up. I think these days, it's rather now more evolved something that is no longer seen as exclusively individual. And this is something you can think about, but rather something that draws on itself for Instagram, for influences and new sources. So it's because we're in this sort of more digital, we're working in a much more digital way now. Sometimes other disciplines from other cultures, or perhaps reevaluating our own heritage. Thus I think we're witnessing a new birth and a guise for creativity, perhaps one that is an interdisciplinary response. And we've got a lot of people doing a lot of collaborations these days. We need to think differently, more creatively, perhaps in new ways of working, including forms of collaboration or new technologies and processes. What business models are necessary in order to survive and prosper? Perhaps these questions lead to new questions. Do we need to break a few things down before we can build? Breaking stereotypes, revisiting fashion imagery and gender fluidity, breaking the internet and new technology. How can digitalization reinforce the design process? The distribution of retail, fashion marketing, consumption in fashion. So breaking down and building new roles in fashion. I mean, there was a time when the fashion designer, and we go back to the 1930s and 20s and so on, we have Madeleine Vianney and people like that, and you know, Coco Chanel, and they were the designers. They actually did the designs, and you know, you got images of Madeleine Vianney working on the little mini mannequins, making her designs, and to a certain extent, I think they do a little bit today, but not so much. It's more about being a design director now. Fashion designers are looking to take on different roles within their jobs. Fashion designers are looking to take on different roles in society and designing as well, and curating exhibitions, collaborating with other art sectors. So it's not just about being a fashion designer anymore. You get Hussein Shalane collaborated with a film artist a few years back, and you know, you get people collaborating with scientists, or one of myself with pattern cutting and surgery cutting. What is the role of management in all of this transition? Designer or creative director? So it's quite interesting to think that there's all that breaking down, building new roles. Fashion designers are looking to take a different role in society. Yeah, I've said that. And I think really we're probably nearly at the end here. What have I got? I've got a few notes here, maybe breaking stereotypes, revisiting fashion imagery and gender fluidity, breaking the internet. I've said this. How can digitalization reinforce the design process? Yeah, we've said that. So I'm just wondering whether that's giving you lots of food for thought to think about what actually is it, what is the, you know, what makes a signature now is it the same as what it was before? You know, think about young designers trying to break through. We've just looked at designers that are already up there, that made their name long ago. You know, back in the day when I was starting out, you know, I remember Comme des Garçons just starting out, and Margiela and Hussein Chalain and all of that. You know, years and years later, their names that we know. Is it going to be necessarily the same for you as young designers, or is it going to be a different route, a different path? You don't have to follow in the same path that other people have done it. It's different. We're in a different time now. You've got all this digital stuff that you can really create, really use. And I think actually one of you mentioned that last week about, I think we mentioned something about digitalization being used in different ways and helping, you know, I think, was it Amber? I think, did you say something about things being on, you know, being able to sell stuff on the internet that we couldn't do before? And you've got people like, I mean, going back a bit now, but like Justin Bieber made his name on the internet, didn't he? And it was like, oh my God, where's he just sprung up from? Not, and it doesn't matter whether you like him or not, he's an absolute millionaire now, whether you like him or not. That wasn't available for us in those days. We didn't have internet, we didn't have you know, the mobile phones. So, you know, it was, you've got lots of choices, different